In 1910, amidst the quiet hills of Louisville, Kentucky, a massive building rose from the thick fog. Waverly Hills Sanatorium, with its cold stone walls and towering windows, was built as a beacon of hope, promising to heal those afflicted by tuberculosis, the death sentence of its time. But no one could have imagined that this place would soon become a living tomb, where light was devoured by darkness, and unfortunate souls were imprisoned in endless hallways. Tuberculosis, a disease that ravaged the body with bloody coughs and shallow breaths, turned Waverly Hills into a battlefield of despair. Thousands of patients were brought here, their eyes flickering with faint hope, only to have it extinguished by barbaric treatments. Doctors, desperate to find a cure, resorted to horrifying procedures, pumping air into lungs to expand them, removing ribs, and cutting away muscle tissue to make room for failing lungs. The anguished screams echoed through the corridors, mingling with the stench of antiseptics and death. Each night, pale moonlight streamed through the windows, casting its glow on motionless patients lying in bed, like ghosts waiting for the end. But the most terrifying part wasn't the surgeries. Beneath the building, a hidden tunnel was carved through the hill, infamously known as the Death Tunnel. The bodies of the unfortunate were transported in silence, under cover of darkness, to hide the horrifying death toll. Hospital staff, expressionless, pushed wheelchairs carrying corpses through the tunnel, where light never touched. Locals began whispering about strange noises from underground, groans scratching at stone walls, as if souls were clawing to escape their buried prison. Supernatural signs appeared from the very beginning. Nurses reported seeing shadowy figures gliding through the halls on moonless nights, leaving no footsteps behind. Some swore they heard the cries of children echoing from empty rooms, even though no children were ever treated there. An elderly doctor who worked at Waverly Hills in its early years wrote in his journal that he once saw a patient, dead for days, standing silently at the foot of a bed, staring with pale white eyes. He quit the next day and never spoke of it again. People in Louisville began calling Waverly Hills the Haunted Hill. Neighbors reported flickering lights in the windows at night, long after the hospital had closed for the day. A nearby farmer claimed he saw a white figure standing on the rooftop, long hair blowing in the wind, even though no one was there. When he approached, the figure vanished, leaving behind a bone-chilling cold. The story spread, but no one dared to investigate. They only knew that each time they passed Waverly Hills, a heaviness pressed against their chest, as if the building was breathing, watching. The hospital was not just a place for tuberculosis patients. It seemed to have its own consciousness, a living entity that swallowed all hope and left only fear. Staff began refusing night shifts, claiming they felt watched by invisible eyes. One young nurse, during a night shift, said she heard whispers coming from the wall, "Stay with us." When she turned around, the hallway was empty, but an old, dusty hospital bed had moved several meters without anyone touching it. She quit the very next morning, haunted by what she'd experienced. Waverly Hills was never just a hospital. It was a gateway to another world, where tortured spirits could never find rest. The groans, the shadows, and the earliest signs of haunting were only the beginning of a curse that would last for centuries. As the final light of day fades and darkness covers the hill, Waverly Hills still stands, silent, waiting for the curious to enter, and perhaps never leave. As tuberculosis was gradually pushed back thanks to medical advancements, Waverly Hills Sanatorium seemed ready to close the dark chapter of its history. But darkness never left this place. In the 1960s, the massive building atop the Louisville Hill was repurposed as a mental hospital, opening a new chapter of pain and horror. The walls once soaked with the blood and tears of tuberculosis patients now echoed with the screams of lost souls, trapped in a nightmare without escape. Mental patients at Waverly Hills were not treated like human beings. They were test subjects for cruel treatments. Lobotomies that removed parts of the brain, electroshock that caused violent convulsions, and brutal beatings by nurses and guards. Soundproof rooms designed to muffle the screams became cages for tortured spirits. The pungent smell of anesthesia mixed with the mold of peeling walls, creating a suffocating atmosphere, as if the building itself was breathing in the pain of those inside. But among the gloomy corridors, room 502 on the 5th floor stood out as the darkest stain in Waverly Hills history. In 1928, the head nurse was found hanging in this room, a rope tied around her neck, her lifeless eyes staring into the darkness. It was said she was pregnant with a doctor's child, and her death was a suicide caused by depression. But darker whispers claimed she was murdered to cover up a horrific secret: illegal medical experiments on patients. 4 years later, in 1932, another nurse working in room 502 jumped from the hospital rooftop, her body shattered on the cold ground. Some claimed she didn't jump, she was pushed, but the culprit was never found. Both deaths left unanswered questions, and room 502 became cursed, a place even the bravest staff refused to enter alone. Paranormal phenomena began to surround the room. Night shift nurses reported hearing sobbing from within, even though the door was always locked. A security guard swore he saw a woman in white standing by the window, her long hair covering her face, silently gazing down at the death tunnel below. When he approached, the figure vanished, leaving a chilling cold and a whisper, "Don't let them know." Some reported feeling strangled upon entering the room, as if an invisible rope was tightening around their necks. The old mirrors in room 502 were said to reflect faces that didn't belong to the living, with pale white eyes and twisted smiles. Beyond room 502, other parts of the hospital were also haunted by unexplainable occurrences. In the abandoned dining hall, staff often smelled toasted bread, even though the kitchen had long been shut down. A nurse said she once saw a rocking chair moving on its own in a patient's room, as if someone were sitting there humming a cold, low lullaby. On the 2nd floor, once used for critical patients, the sound of children giggling was heard, though no children were ever treated there. A retired doctor recalled seeing a long-dead psychiatric patient standing silently in the corner of a room, muttering, "They never left." Waverly Hills was not just a mental hospital, it was a prison for trapped souls. Every brick, every door seemed soaked in pain and resentment. Dark figures glided through hallways, whispers came from nowhere, and freezing gusts swept through even closed windows. The building seemed alive, watching all who entered with invisible eyes. Those who worked there all agreed, Waverly Hills does not let anyone go. And in the darkness of room 502, an eternal curse still waits, ready to consume anyone who dares to trespass. Today, the Waverly Hills Sanatorium stands silently among the hills of Louisville, Kentucky, like a giant ghost covered in dust and memories. The decaying building, with peeling walls and broken windows, is no longer a place of healing, but a destination for ghost hunters and curious tourists, drawn by its terrifying reputation. But those who step into Waverly Hills all sense a chilling truth. The darkness here is not just memory, it is alive, lurking, and relentless. Ghost hunting teams, equipped with cameras and EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, devices, have captured occurrences that freeze the blood. In the abandoned dining hall, where broken furniture lies scattered, they smelled the faint scent of toasted bread, even though the kitchen ceased operation decades ago. A team from the Louisville Ghost Hunters Society reported that as they were leaving the dining hall, a heavy door slammed shut, despite the absence of wind. Their camera captured a tall, faceless shadow standing silently in the corner of the room. As they approached, the figure vanished, but the EVP device recorded a distorted, low voice, "Don't leave, stay with us." The 2nd floor, once reserved for critical patients, is haunted by the sound of children's laughter. One ghost hunter said he heard giggling at the end of the hallway, as if a child were playing. But as he got closer, the laughter turned into sobbing, then fell silent. His team's camera captured the image of a little girl in a white dress, standing in a corner, staring with empty eyes. When he called out to her, she vanished, but tiny wet footprints appeared on the floor, leading into the wall. No one could explain why a child would appear in a place where no children were ever treated. Room 502 remains the epicenter of horror. Visitors report feeling suffocated when entering, as if an invisible hand is tightening around their necks. One investigation team recorded an EVP clip with a scream, "Help me," mixed with a woman sobbing. A tourist named Joey, who visited Waverly Hills in 2018, shared an experience that made him swear never to return. While standing on the rooftop with his friends, he saw shadowy figures darting by at impossible speeds. His friend Chris felt someone touch his shoulder, but when he turned around, no one was there. Suddenly, a nearby door slammed shut, and wet footprints appeared on the dry floor, leading down the stairs. Joey's group ran, but rapid footsteps chased them, as if an invisible crowd was pursuing them. A more terrifying discovery came from a ghost hunting team in 2020. In room 502, they found an old, rotting leather-bound notebook hidden beneath the wooden floor. The notebook was the diary of a nurse from the 1920s, detailing cruel experiments on tuberculosis and psychiatric patients. One final page, written in a trembling hand, read, "They know what I saw. They won't let me live." The team reported that when they read the diary out loud, all their flashlights went out at once, and a cold wind blew through, carrying a whisper, "Don't speak." Since then, the notebook has mysteriously vanished, never to be found again. Waverly Hills is not just a ruin, it is a living entity, imprisoning tortured and vengeful spirits. Reports of objects moving on their own, windows shaking violently, and shadows gliding through darkness continue to this day. Some ghost hunters claim to have seen the figure of a nurse in room 502, her long hair covering her face, mumbling incomprehensible words. Those brave enough to stay overnight say they felt the building watching them, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment. The biggest question still hangs in the air. What is really happening at Waverly Hills? Are these trapped souls, or is there a darker force at play? No one stays long enough to find out the truth. The building still stands, silent yet menacing, like a warning. Those who enter may never leave. And in the darkness of its shadowy hallways, a disembodied voice still whispers, "Don't come back."